Welcome to my next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow more amazing content. Two police officers, Andrew and Mark, began what seemed like an ordinary day. While patrolling the streets, they spotted a black man named Jonathan standing by the roadside. Andrew and Mark suspected Jonathan might be connected to a recent theft based on unverified information. With no concrete evidence, they decided to stop their car and approach Jonathan with an unfriendly attitude. Andrew quickly demanded Jonathan's identification, while Mark stood behind, eyeing him with a look of prejudice. Although Jonathan remained calm, he couldn't help but feel the tension in the situation. Andrew kept asking leading questions, like, "What are you doing here? And are you aware of the recent theft nearby?" These questions not only frustrated Jonathan, but also made him feel unfairly targeted. Jonathan responded calmly, trying to stay cooperative. He handed over his ID to Andrew and explained that he was on his way home after a business trip. However, Andrew and Mark still appeared dissatisfied. Mark stepped closer with an intimidating demeanor. The atmosphere grew more tense as Andrew and Mark took turns questioning Jonathan with increasingly unreasonable inquiries. Passers-by began to stop and watch, though none dared to intervene. Andrew and Mark's behavior grew more aggressive as they became frustrated with Jonathan's calm responses. Andrew decided to search Jonathan roughly. Even though there was no legitimate reason to do so, Mark joined in without hesitation, and they soon rummaged through Jonathan's bag. Finding some money in Jonathan's bag, Andrew and Mark immediately leveled baseless accusations. "Where did you get this money?" Andrew demanded harshly. Jonathan attempted to explain that it was for his business trip, but Andrew and Mark refused to listen. They went as far as to humiliate him in front of onlookers. Using demeaning language, Mark sneered, "Don't think you can get away with anything. We're always watching." Jonathan, though visibly hurt and angry, maintained his composure and refrained from reacting. The bystanders began whispering among themselves, yet no one dared to speak up out of fear. Some people started recording the scene on their phones, but Andrew quickly threatened, "Anyone filming better delete it, unless you want trouble with us." The crowd reluctantly complied, though their unease was evident. Jonathan realized that any resistance could worsen the situation, so he focused on staying calm, waiting for an opportunity to address the injustice in a more strategic way. After being humiliated and robbed of his money, Jonathan returned home with a heavy heart. However, what Andrew and Mark didn't realize was that Jonathan was the newly appointed police chief of their department. His mission was to reform the force, specifically to address issues of abuse of power and internal violence. What he had just experienced only strengthened his resolve to make real changes in the system. Jonathan knew that to initiate meaningful reform, he would need to act strategically and cautiously. He decided to keep the incident a secret, at least initially, to observe and evaluate his team more clearly. That evening, he spent hours planning his reform strategy, thinking carefully about how to not only root out harmful individuals but also create a fair and transparent work environment for everyone. Jonathan understood that this wouldn't be an easy task. He knew that change couldn't come solely from rules and regulations. It required shifts in mindset and attitudes among the officers. Using his experience and insight, he was determined to guide this transformation. Jonathan didn't seek revenge. He wanted to reform the department and help the officers recognize their mistakes, so they could become better at serving and protecting the community. On his first day at the police department, Jonathan made a strong impression on the entire team with his calm and confident demeanor. No one knew about the incident that had occurred the previous day, and Andrew and Mark didn't recognize Jonathan as the man they had humiliated. Jonathan entered his new office with a sense of hope and determination. He began his day by meeting with the team leaders to understand the department's operations and emphasize the importance of upholding professional ethics. During the meeting, Jonathan listened attentively to each report and asked questions about key issues he deemed important. He didn't shy away from pointing out weaknesses in the current system, always accompanied by constructive suggestions. The team leaders could feel Jonathan's sincerity and resolve to improve the working environment. Andrew and Mark, although not team leaders, were also present at the meeting. They appeared indifferent, completely unaware that the man they had encountered on the street was now their superior. Jonathan quietly observed and noted their attitude, knowing that there would come a time to address what had happened with them. However, he wanted to give them a chance to change before imposing any disciplinary actions. He hoped that, through the reforms he planned to implement, Andrew and Mark might recognize their mistakes and seek to better themselves. Jonathan's first meeting with the entire police team took place the following day. As he entered the room, everyone stood to greet him, including Andrew and Mark. However, as Jonathan approached, Andrew and Mark were taken aback, realizing that he was the very man they had treated so poorly. Unease began to creep into their minds, yet they tried to remain calm, hoping Jonathan wouldn't recognize them. Jonathan, however, gave no outward sign that he remembered them, yet his gaze as he looked directly at them felt piercing, and Andrew and Mark felt exposed. Jonathan opened the meeting with a brief but firm speech, speaking about the values he intended to uphold within the department: honesty, respect, and accountability. He emphasized that there would be zero tolerance for abuse of power or disrespect toward the public. As they listened, Andrew and Mark could feel the gravity of Jonathan's words. They began to realize that this new police chief was unlike anyone they had worked with before, and perhaps their past misdeeds would no longer be overlooked. Anxiety mounted within them, and they couldn't help but wonder if Jonathan had truly recognized them, and if so, what he might do next. Jonathan decided not to confront Andrew and Mark directly right away. Instead, he wanted to give them a chance to show whether they could change. Observing them from a distance, he noted their behavior and interactions carefully. Jonathan spent time meeting and listening to other officers in the department, gaining a clearer understanding of the internal dynamics and identifying positive and negative influences among the staff. He also began organizing short workshops on professional ethics and how to interact respectfully with the public. Jonathan aimed to foster an environment where all officers could grasp the importance of respect and responsibility. Although Andrew and Mark were initially unenthusiastic about these workshops, they were required to attend. Jonathan noticed that over time, their indifference began to shift, replaced by more contemplative expressions. In addition to workshops, Jonathan introduced hypothetical scenarios, asking officers to discuss fair and responsible ways to handle them. He paid particular attention to Andrew and Mark's reactions. In some discussions, Jonathan purposely presented scenarios similar to what Andrew and Mark had done to him, gauging their responses. At first, both seemed uncomfortable and reluctant to engage, but gradually, they began to understand the consequences that abuse of power could have, not only for victims but for themselves as well. Through these sessions, Jonathan saw a gradual shift. Andrew and Mark were beginning to reflect on their actions, realizing the profound impact that respect and fairness could have on the lives of those they served. Jonathan began gathering information about previous cases involving Andrew and Mark. He discovered that this was not the first time the two had abused their power. Several past incidents had been either concealed or handled superficially. Realizing it was time to take action to prevent such behavior from continuing, Jonathan started working closely with the internal investigation team, requesting that old files related to cases of power abuse involving Andrew and Mark be reopened. These investigations were conducted quietly, yet rumors about Jonathan's decision to review past cases began spreading within the department. Andrew and Mark felt the pressure mounting. Understanding they were under Jonathan's scrutiny, Mark began losing sleep, anxious that his past misdeeds might be exposed. He realized that his actions could not only cost him his job but could also lead to more severe consequences. Andrew, too, was feeling the tension, and disagreements began to arise between the two. Andrew suggested they stay silent and work hard to make up for their mistakes, while Mark feared it was already too late to correct their wrongs. Jonathan continued monitoring and collecting evidence. He knew that any disciplinary action against Andrew and Mark would need to be backed by irrefutable proof. At the same time, he aimed to give them a chance to change, believing that true transformation from within was the most effective way to address the root of the problem. Andrew and Mark continued their lives and work as usual, but now, they constantly felt they were being watched. The internal investigations weighed heavily on them, filling their daily patrols with anxiety and fear of being discovered and punished for their past actions. Mark, who had always exuded confidence and even arrogance, began to grow quieter. The burden of his past misdeeds weighed heavily on him. Sleepless nights left him exhausted and tense, and he started avoiding conversations with colleagues, fearing any word might reveal his mistakes. Gradually, he also realized the pain his actions had inflicted on innocent people, filling him with a growing sense of guilt. Andrew was no better off. He felt remorseful but didn't know how to correct his wrongs. Andrew began questioning his values and the purpose of his work. He had once believed he was upholding law and order, but now, he saw that he had misused his power and caused others unnecessary suffering. Every time he saw Jonathan at the station, both he and Mark felt uneasy, unable to look him in the eye. One day, while on patrol, Andrew and Mark encountered a situation with a civilian who was uncooperative. In the past, they might have resorted to force, but this time, they chose a gentler approach. Andrew recalled Jonathan's words during the workshops and decided to hold back, attempting to handle the issue calmly and fairly. Andrew's restraint surprised Mark, and in that moment, they both realized they had the potential to change. Perhaps this was their chance to start anew. Jonathan decided to arrange a confrontation with Andrew and Mark at the police station. He wanted to speak directly with them to see if they had the courage to admit their mistakes. The meeting took place in Jonathan's office, with an air of tension hanging heavily in the room. When Jonathan invited Andrew and Mark into his office, both men felt their hearts race. They didn't know exactly what Jonathan wanted to discuss, but they knew it wouldn't be an easy conversation. Jonathan began by reiterating the values that the police department needed to uphold: honesty and accountability. Then, looking directly at Andrew and Mark, he asked them about the incidents that had occurred recently. Jonathan didn't just mention the incident he had personally experienced. He also brought up past cases he had investigated. For each incident, Jonathan presented clear and undeniable evidence. Andrew and Mark felt as if they were being cornered, unable to deny what they had done. Both were silent, unsure of what to say. Jonathan continued, his tone calm yet authoritative, explaining that he didn't wish to punish them if they truly wanted to change. He said he believed in the human capacity for redemption and making amends. But to achieve this, Andrew and Mark would need to acknowledge their wrongdoings and commit to not repeating them. Andrew was the first to speak. He lowered his head, his voice choked with emotion. "I'm sorry, Chief. I was wrong, and I'm willing to take responsibility for what I've done." Mark, initially hesitant, then admitted his mistakes as well. "I apologize, too. I let power cloud my judgment, and I know I need to change." Jonathan listened to their apologies calmly. He knew that words were just the first step. What truly mattered would be the actions they took from here on. After the confrontation with Jonathan, Andrew and Mark began to feel a genuine sense of unease. They knew their time could be running out, and that their past actions might finally catch up with them. However, instead of sinking into pointless worry, both started to seriously consider ways to make amends. Andrew spent more time reflecting on his actions. He realized that he had crossed a line, and that his abuse of power had not only hurt others but also diminished his own value as an officer. He began seeking out community activities as a way to make amends. Andrew joined youth outreach programs, talking to young people about respecting the law and the responsibility of every citizen. These talks made him feel like he was contributing something meaningful, and he found a new sense of joy in helping others that he had never experienced before. Mark, too, started to feel remorseful. He thought back on his abuses of power and realized that his actions had not only been wrong but had tarnished the honor of being a police officer. He decided to volunteer with a counseling program for individuals who had committed offenses, helping them find a path forward. First, Mark felt awkward and unsure if he could genuinely help them. But over time, he saw that sharing his experiences and supporting others was also a way for him to atone for his own mistakes. Both began to wonder if there was a way to make things right. They knew Jonathan wasn't one to overlook wrongdoing easily, but they also sensed his fairness and sincerity. Andrew and Mark decided that they needed to change, not just to keep their jobs, but to make amends to those they had harmed. In the days that followed, Andrew and Mark worked harder, showing respect to everyone around them, from colleagues to civilians. They knew that regaining people's trust wouldn't be easy and would take a long time, but both were determined to prove they could change and become better officers. Jonathan, though he never mentioned the incident directly, quietly observed their transformation. He hoped that, through his actions and example, Andrew and Mark would truly come to understand the value of being fair and responsible officers. Following the domestic violence incident, Andrew and Mark began receiving praise from their colleagues. The doubtful glances once cast their way had turned into looks of respect and recognition. Some colleagues, who had previously been unfriendly toward them, now acknowledged the genuine effort and growth they displayed. Andrew and Mark also felt more confident in sharing their experiences. In team meetings, they no longer avoided eye contact or shied away. They actively participated in discussions about challenging situations and how to handle them fairly and responsibly. Observing their progress, Jonathan decided to entrust them with a larger responsibility, participating in the department's comprehensive reform campaign. This reform campaign was not just an internal effort but one that involved the community. Jonathan envisioned a police department that not only enforced the law but also served and protected its people with compassion and accountability. Although Andrew and Mark initially felt apprehensive about their abilities, with Jonathan's encouragement, they bravely stood up and shared their past mistakes and their journey of change before the entire department. Their openness inspired others, and their willingness to own up to their flaws and grow became a powerful message within the campaign. The reform campaign initiated by Jonathan began to receive widespread support from other officers. Workshops, open discussions, and community engagement activities continued to be organized, drawing participation not only from the police force but also from the local community. Jonathan encouraged everyone to share their perspectives and contribute ideas, making the campaign a collective effort. Andrew and Mark became key facilitators in these discussions, openly sharing the challenges they faced in changing their behavior and how they overcame them. Their stories helped many younger officers understand the importance of treating everyone with fairness and responsibility. They also became sources of inspiration, encouraging their colleagues to acknowledge their mistakes and strive to improve themselves. The reform campaign extended beyond workshops and included direct community involvement, such as aiding the homeless, organizing legal counseling sessions for citizens, and participating in volunteer activities. Andrew and Mark engaged enthusiastically, discovering that helping the community was not only a duty but also a source of joy and fulfillment in their roles. Through these actions, they both realized the true value of their positions and how impactful a dedicated, compassionate police force could be for the community. The reforms at the police department began to make a noticeable impact on the community. People felt more at ease when interacting with the police, and gradually, trust in law enforcement was restored. No longer did they fear or feel suspicious every time they were pulled over or asked for an ID check. Younger officers, inspired by Jonathan's leadership and the transformation of Andrew and Mark, worked diligently to rebuild trust within the community. Andrew and Mark actively participated in community events, organizing meet-and-greet sessions to listen to citizens' feedback. They aimed to show that police officers were not only enforcers of the law but also protectors and servants of the community. At one such meeting, a resident shared that they had once feared the police because of past events, but now, they felt safer knowing that the department was changing for the better. Jonathan received positive feedback from the community about the police department's transformation, He knew that sustainable change couldn't rely solely on policies and rules. It required a shift in mindset and attitude within every officer. He continued to encourage open dialogue, listening to everyone's concerns, and finding ways to support each officer in their personal growth. Meanwhile, Andrew and Mark came to realize that, while their past mistakes couldn't be erased, they could do everything possible to atone and become better people. Their transformation not only renewed their colleagues' faith in them, but also gave hope to the community, who began to believe in the possibility of a fairer, more compassionate police force. One day, Andrew and Mark received a letter from Samuel, the man they had previously treated unjustly. In the letter, Samuel recounted what had happened that day and expressed the feelings of humiliation and injustice he had endured. However, Samuel also mentioned that he had heard about the changes within the police department, especially regarding Andrew and Mark. He expressed surprise and appreciation upon learning that they had genuinely changed and were striving to become better officers. Samuel wrote that he had seen them at a community gathering where they shared their journey. He sensed sincerity in their words. "I once lost faith in the police," Samuel wrote, "but seeing you both change has made me believe that everyone deserves a chance to correct their mistakes and start anew." Samuel ended the letter with words of gratitude and a hope that they would continue on the right path. Reading Samuel's letter, Andrew and Mark felt both moved and relieved. They realized that their efforts to change weren't just about regaining the trust of their colleagues, but also about making amends for the harm they had caused others. Samuel's forgiveness felt like a release, giving them renewed confidence and determination to continue on their new path. Jonathan, aware of Samuel's letter, decided to arrange a meeting between Samuel, Andrew, and Mark. This would be an opportunity for all three to engage in an open dialogue. The meeting was sincere, free from the tension and mistrust of the past. Samuel looked directly at Andrew and Mark, and without hesitation, they apologized to him again. Samuel smiled and said he had forgiven them long ago. This meeting became a pivotal moment, allowing Andrew and Mark to truly grasp the meaning of atonement and forgiveness. Jonathan decided to organize a ceremony recognizing the transformation of Andrew and Mark in front of the entire police department. This event was not just a tribute to them, but also a way to inspire others within the department about the power of change and self-improvement. Jonathan began the ceremony by sharing the journey of Andrew and Mark, from their initial mistakes to their tireless efforts to atone and improve. Jonathan said, "Everyone can make mistakes, but what truly matters is having the courage to admit and rectify them. Andrew and Mark are living proof that people can change and become better if they have the determination." His words filled the hall with silence as everyone listened, absorbing the profound message he conveyed. Then, Andrew and Mark stepped onto the stage, visibly emotional and somewhat nervous standing before their colleagues. Taking the microphone, Andrew said, "We made serious mistakes, and we don't expect anyone to forget what we did. But we hope that, through our efforts, we can regain everyone's trust." Mark added, "We want to thank everyone for their patience, especially Jonathan, who gave us the chance to change. We will continue striving to be better officers, not just for ourselves but for the community we serve." The ceremony ended with a resounding round of applause. Andrew and Mark felt a deep sense of relief, as if they had laid a new foundation for their lives, rebuilding from the wreckage of their past. After the ceremony, many colleagues approached them to offer congratulations and express respect. The doubtful glances that once greeted them were replaced with warm smiles and firm handshakes. The community, too, began to notice the change. Stories about Andrew and Mark spread, turning them into symbols of positive change and the possibility of redemption. Community gatherings continued to be held, and Andrew and Mark were always present, listening to and helping residents. They had become representatives of reform, showing that police officers are not only law enforcers but also protectors, servants, and learners in their communities. Jonathan observed this transformation with pride. He knew the road ahead was still challenging, but he believed that, with unity and determination, the department could become a place the public trusted and relied upon. Andrew and Mark's journey was just the beginning, yet it was the clearest proof that fairness, determination, and the ability to make amends could bring about better things for everyone. In the months that followed, the department continued its reforms, with Andrew and Mark playing pivotal roles in guiding and inspiring their colleagues. Having endured the hardest phases of their lives, they learned that humility, courage, and responsibility were essential qualities of a good police officer. In the end, they proved that, with commitment and community support, anyone can change and become a better person. After the recognition ceremony, Jonathan assigned Andrew and Mark a new, challenging task: investigating a corruption case within the police department itself. This was a complex case, and Jonathan wanted to test their integrity and commitment once more. The investigation required not only investigative skills but also the courage to face powerful individuals within their own ranks. Andrew and Mark accepted the assignment with a mix of apprehension and determination. They understood that to foster a clean and just working environment, they would have to stand up against wrongdoing, even if it involved their colleagues. With Jonathan's support and assistance from the internal investigation team, they began uncovering evidence of corruption involving several high-ranking officers who had abused their power for personal gain. The investigation was anything but easy. Andrew and Mark faced numerous threats and pressure from those implicated in the corruption. Some colleagues who had once been friendly now distanced themselves, with rumors and jibes circulating that they were betraying their peers. However, Andrew and Mark remained steadfast, reminding themselves of their past mistakes and their resolve to prevent such wrongs from happening again. Throughout the investigation, they encountered many obstacles, from gathering evidence to dealing with interference from influential individuals. Yet, with Jonathan and the loyal team's support, they managed to overcome each hurdle. Andrew and Mark also learned how to work more effectively as a team, utilizing each member's strengths to carry out the investigation carefully and accurately. Their journey was not only about exposing corruption but also about solidifying their commitment to integrity and justice, regardless of the personal costs. After months of investigation, Andrew and Mark finally gathered enough evidence to indict those involved in the corruption scandal. They understood that exposing these wrongdoings would send shockwaves through the department and that they might face severe backlash from the implicated individuals. Jonathan organized an urgent meeting attended by high-ranking officers and the internal investigation team. In the meeting, Andrew and Mark presented the evidence they had collected. The atmosphere grew tense as each document and piece of proof was revealed. Some of the accused officers attempted to deny and justify their actions, but the evidence was too conclusive to refute. There was a moment when Andrew and Mark felt genuine fear. One of the accused officers, a powerful individual with significant connections, stood up and threatened to destroy their careers. However, Jonathan, calm and authoritative, stood up to defend Andrew and Mark. He emphasized that the department could not tolerate corruption and abuse of power and that everyone, regardless of their position, must be accountable before the law. The meeting concluded with a decision to suspend the implicated officers pending further investigation. Andrew and Mark, despite feeling the immense pressure and tension, also felt a sense of relief. They had done the right thing, and they had dared to stand up for justice and fairness. Their courage not only set a new standard in the department but also signaled a shift towards integrity and accountability, reinforcing the values that Jonathan was determined to uphold. Following the intense investigation and confrontations, the police department underwent a significant transformation. Officers implicated in corruption were suspended, and some faced criminal charges, sending a powerful message throughout the department. This upheaval was shocking, yet it presented an opportunity for the department to rebuild with renewed values of fairness and transparency. Jonathan understood that for the department to thrive, he needed to restore trust among its members. He organized meetings to emphasize the importance of unity and honesty. He reminded everyone that, despite the challenges, Working together with a shared goal of protecting the community and upholding justice would transform the department into a place they could all take pride in. Andrew and Mark became central figures in this reform. They not only contributed to the investigation but also inspired their colleagues with their personal stories of mistakes, growth, and the courage to make amends. Their openness motivated many young officers, helping them realize that while mistakes are inevitable, there is always an opportunity to correct them and begin anew. The community also noticed the positive changes within the department. Community meetings became more frequent, and residents began to feel a renewed trust in the police. Andrew and Mark attended these gatherings, listening to community feedback and working to improve the department's services. They recognized that trust must be built daily, and they were committed to proving that the police force had changed and would protect and serve the community with fairness and integrity. With the support of Andrew, Mark, and other dedicated officers, Jonathan continued to drive the necessary reforms. He knew that there were still challenges ahead, but with unity and determination, he was confident the department could overcome any obstacles and become a true symbol of justice and trust for the community. After the suspension of corrupt officers, Jonathan observed a noticeable shift in the morale across the police department. However, new challenges emerged as some members, though uninvolved in corruption, felt unsettled and uncertain about the future. To address this, Jonathan organized a department-wide meeting to share his vision and the upcoming direction of the reforms. He wanted everyone to understand that these changes were not meant to punish, but to foster a fair work environment where all officers could feel respected and encouraged to serve their best for the community. Jonathan emphasized that these reforms would benefit everyone and aimed to make the police department a model of integrity and accountability. During the meeting, Andrew and Mark, having gone through their own transformations, shared their perspectives. They spoke about their journey, from past mistakes to their determination to improve. Andrew said, "We've made mistakes, but what matters is that we learn from them and keep striving to do better. Change can be daunting, but it's also an opportunity for us to grow." Mark added, "Trust is hard to build but easy to lose. We're working every day to prove that we can be better, and we hope everyone will join us on this path." Their heartfelt words helped ease the anxieties of many. Jonathan noticed a shift in the department's atmosphere, from apprehension to a sense of shared purpose and resolve. The meeting concluded with a strong sense of unity and commitment. Jonathan understood that this was just the beginning, but it was an essential step toward rebuilding trust and camaraderie within the department. After the department-wide meeting, Jonathan began implementing a series of training programs and reforms. He understood that for a deep transformation to occur, disciplinary measures alone were not enough. There also needed to be a change in the work culture and the mindset of each individual. He launched new training programs focusing on communication skills, situational handling, and professional ethics. Jonathan also encouraged everyone to participate in community activities to gain a better understanding of the people they served. Andrew and Mark, who had now become examples of positive change, were assigned the task of guiding and training young officers. They not only shared professional knowledge but also recounted hard-earned lessons from their own lives. Their stories of mistakes, regret, and the journey to self-discovery inspired many. Young officers began to see their work not just as a responsibility but as a mission to protect and assist the community. One of Jonathan's initiatives was to foster closer relationships between the police force and the community. He aimed to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the public. To achieve this, the police department organized meet-and-greet events and open houses, where citizens could visit, learn about police work, and voice their opinions and concerns. Andrew and Mark were pioneers in these activities. They spent time talking with residents, listening to their feedback and questions. During one such gathering, a young boy asked Andrew, "Are you a hero?" Andrew smiled, knelt down, and said, "I'm not a hero, but I'm trying to become a better person each day so I can protect you and everyone else." His answer touched everyone present, serving as a testament to the changes in Andrew and Mark's outlook. Additionally, Jonathan encouraged members of the department to engage in volunteer activities, such as helping the homeless and organizing free classes for children from disadvantaged backgrounds. These activities not only helped build a positive image of the police in the community's eyes, but also gave officers a deeper understanding of the hardships that people face. Through these efforts, the police department gradually regained the community's trust. Words of thanks and smiles from citizens made officers like Andrew and Mark feel their work was more meaningful than ever. Jonathan felt satisfied seeing the positive progress of the entire police department. He knew that while the road ahead was still filled with challenges, the department was building a strong foundation for sustainable growth. Based on honesty, fairness, and responsibility, Jonathan understood that trust was the key element for the police department to function effectively and receive community support. To further strengthen this trust, he proposed a series of collaborative projects between the police and the community to address shared concerns, particularly those related to public safety and social welfare. One of the first initiatives was establishing a community volunteer patrol, where police officers and community members would work together to patrol neighborhoods and maintain order. Andrew and Mark were given the responsibility to lead this volunteer team, supported by young officers and enthusiastic local residents. Andrew and Mark began organizing meetings with residents interested in joining the volunteer patrol. They listened to everyone's concerns, from safety issues to specific suggestions on how to improve the neighborhood. These meetings fostered a friendly and open atmosphere, gradually building a meaningful connection between the police and the community. Beyond neighborhood patrols, the Community Volunteer Patrol also organized support activities for local residents, such as repairing homes for low-income families, collecting trash in public areas, and assisting families in emergencies. These actions helped build trust and create a better living environment for everyone involved. One night, while patrolling with the volunteer team, Andrew met an elderly woman who lived alone in an old house. She shared with Andrew her fear of the nights, as the area had previously experienced frequent break-ins. Andrew sat with her, assuring her that patrols would be increased and the area would be kept secure. The elderly woman, moved by his words, held Andrew's hand and thanked him, saying she felt much safer. Moments like these made Andrew realize the true purpose of being a police officer, not just enforcing laws but being a protector and bringing peace to the community. Jonathan recognized that building a safe and united community required a strong connection with the younger generation. He decided to launch a special educational program for students in local schools. This program aimed to teach them about the importance of the law, civic responsibility, and to foster trust between youth and the police force. Andrew and Mark, with their unique experiences and personal stories, were invited to speak to students at these schools. Initially, they felt a bit nervous, uncertain if their stories would resonate with the students. However, as they shared their journey, from making mistakes to finding remorse and committing to change, they saw a sense of attentiveness and empathy from the students. Mark shared with the students, "We all make mistakes, but what matters is that we learn from them and constantly strive to become a better version of ourselves. You all are the future of this community, and I hope you'll always choose to do the right thing, no matter how challenging it may be." The students asked a variety of questions, from inquiries about police work to handling difficult situations. One student asked Andrew, "How do you deal with fear when facing dangerous people?" Andrew smiled and responded, "I get scared too, but I know that if I don't do something, no one else will. The important thing is knowing that you're doing the right thing and doing it for others." This educational program not only helped students understand more about the role of the police, but also helped build trust and respect for law enforcement. The open and honest conversations created a bridge between the younger generation and the police, helping the students feel that the officers weren't strangers but friends who were always ready to protect and support them. Jonathan recognized that, for sustainable change, reforms had to come from within the police department. He initiated the Personal Evaluation and Development Program for all department members. This program aimed to help each officer gain a clearer understanding of their strengths and weaknesses, fostering self-improvement and growth. In this program, each officer would have one-on-one discussions with Jonathan or other leaders to talk about their work experience, challenges, and future goals. Jonathan wanted to create an environment where everyone felt safe sharing and received support for their development. He understood that when individuals felt valued and encouraged, they could contribute their best to the community. Andrew and Mark participated as mentors in this program. They shared their own experiences, guiding new officers in understanding the importance of maintaining professional ethics and responsibility to the community. Andrew stated, "We're not just police officers. We're symbols of justice and the community's trust. Every action we take influences how the public views our force." In a session with younger officers, Mark emphasized, "The most important thing to remember is to always put the community's interests first. Only when we work with genuine intentions can we build the trust and respect of the people." The personal evaluation and development program helped many officers recognize their limitations and find ways to improve. Both newer and veteran officers found the program valuable, realizing that they weren't merely enforcers of the law but also essential contributors to building and safeguarding the community. Jonathan knew that change couldn't come from top-down decisions alone. It had to arise from the commitment and unity of the entire force. He felt proud to witness the daily transformation within the department, not only in practices but also in mindset and attitude. This transformation was enhancing the department's effectiveness and restoring public confidence, as citizens saw themselves protected by fair, honest officers willing to learn and grow continuously. After making significant strides in building community trust, Jonathan realized that sustainable change required active participation from both the police force and the community. He decided to launch a new program called Community and Police Partnership. This program focused on establishing partnerships between the police and local organizations, businesses, schools, and community groups. Jonathan invited representatives from community organizations to the police department to discuss shared concerns. During this meeting, the parties had the opportunity to exchange ideas and suggest measures for improving safety and social welfare. These discussions not only helped the police better understand the needs of residents, but also fostered a closer connection between them. One initiative from this program was organizing a monthly Community Safety Day. This event allowed police and residents to engage in activities like first aid training, fire safety exercises, and local security information sessions. These activities not only equipped residents with essential knowledge but also reassured them by demonstrating the police's commitment to support and assistance. Andrew and Mark were assigned to lead these training sessions and community meetings. They put in a lot of effort to prepare easy-to-understand lessons, incorporating real-life examples to illustrate their points. The sessions attracted many participants, from adults to children, creating a friendly and warm atmosphere. Andrew and Mark's personal stories of transformation inspired others, encouraging everyone to work together to build a safer, united community. During one training session, a community member stood up and shared, "I used to have little faith in the police, but thanks to your efforts and approachability, I see things differently now. I understand that the police are not only enforcers of the law but also friends who stand by our side." This statement motivated Jonathan, Andrew, Mark, and the entire police team, reinforcing their dedication to continue their work with renewed passion. After many efforts to build and strengthen the relationship between the police and the community, Jonathan felt it was time to create a memorable milestone, a significant event to symbolize the unity and trust between the police and the people. He decided to organize the Festival of Unity and Hope at the city's Central Park. This would be the largest event to date, offering police and citizens a chance to enjoy, connect, and understand each other better. The festival featured various activities, including traditional games, food stalls, and artistic performances. A large stage was set up where music, dance, and even short skits performed by both police officers and residents brought a joyful and exciting atmosphere. Andrew and Mark took part in a comedic skit about police work, drawing laughter and showing a humorous, approachable side of the officers. whom the community often saw only in their serious uniforms. In his opening speech, Jonathan emphasized, "Unity and trust are the foundation of a strong community. We, the police force, cannot work effectively without the support and cooperation of the people. Today, we are here not only to celebrate, but to reaffirm that we are united and ready to build a brighter future together." One of the most memorable moments of the festival was when local children were invited on stage to share their dreams. A young boy said, "I want to be a police officer like Officer Andrew because he's brave and always helps people." Andrew was momentarily speechless, his eyes reflecting pride and deep emotion. He knew that all the efforts he and Mark had put in had not been in vain. At the end of the festival, Jonathan, Andrew, Mark, other officers, and community members formed a circle, holding hands, and sang the song New Hope. The song resonated through the night air, blending with the glow of twinkling lights, creating a poignant and meaningful scene. The festival was not merely an entertaining event. It became a symbol of unity and the trust that had been built and strengthened.